Good evening. Well, I have a huge pleasure to do tonight, and it's a terrible, amazing honor, and that is to give you a little bit of the reason we are honoring the Pops. The only way to properly celebrate this couple, this wonderful couple, is to pull on some history. And I'm talking about history from the Ojai Community Hospital, history from Community Memorial Healthcare, and of course, history from the Pops. I'm not sure how many of you have read the bulletin. I noticed a little bit of this is in the bulletin. But our experience with the Pops goes back to 1995. That's when they chose to retire. They had spent 3 decades, actually over 3 decades, at UCLA. Dr. Pops, Marty, was a physician, a professor, and he was ending his career as the Dean of Admissions for the UCLA Med School. That sounds like an easy job, right? Why would you want to retire from that? No controversies. Barbara, at the same time, had an equally complex job. She was the director of all volunteers for the med school and for the hospital. All volunteers, that means 1,200. Can you imagine dealing with recruiting and training and scheduling? And when you get done with that, you've got to worry about compliance and new technologies. She too was ready for retirement. So they bought a house on a private drive in Ojai. Marty put in a lap pool. He had a place to exercise. He bought a fishing boat. He got all of the fishing gear that anybody would normally need. His days were made. He was going to get up in the morning, swim his laps, do his exercise, things he's done forever. And maybe 1 or 2 times a week, he would go fishing. Barbara was all in. This made a lot of sense to her. She was going to get to watch her husband exercise as he did all the time and then learn how to cook fish. Marty made a huge mistake. He agreed to have lunch with Joan Kemper. Joan Kemper brought Alan Raines and Steve Olson to this lunch. Now, my guess is that Alan Raines did the majority of the talking. He told Marty how important the local hospital was up here. The Ojai Community Hospital. Incredibly important for the community, incredibly important for him. And then he went into the fact that in the last 10 years, it had been owned by 4 different for-profit, out-of-state companies. And Alan Raines' foundation had no strength, no ability, no management, but he felt it was a good way to lobby the community and to lobby the hospital to do things that they should do. Before Marty had a chance to think about it, Joan Kemper said to Marty, "Dr. Pops, if you're going to live in Ojai, you will volunteer in Ojai." What's he gonna do? So he agreed to join the foundation board, this foundation board at the time. Soon he found that the hospital hadn't been as diligent, the out-of-town owners hadn't been as diligent with the maintenance that they should be and a number of other things. The answer to that is make Marty Pops the vice chair of this foundation. Soon after that happened, he sent the fishing boat down to San Diego, so at least it would have a little bit of use. And I don't know why, and I don't know all the reasons, and maybe it was all the noise that this foundation was making, maybe it was the fact that it was challenging to run a small hospital in Ojai, but the people that owned the hospital announced they were going to close it or sell it, and they wanted to make up their mind right now. So here again, Joan Kemper, Marty Pops, and Alan Raines got together and went through their Rolodex and found some banks that would loan them the money. They borrowed $2.5 million to buy the hospital. Well, I don't know how many folks in the room, yes. The excitement in the community was amazing, and that's one of the things that led the founding of the Guild. The Russells, Peggy and John, the Farrs, Gary and Brenda, and of course, the Pops got together and formed the seeds of this Guild with, guess who? Barbara Pops is the first chairperson of the Guild. The Guild was originally set up to raise the money to pay down the debt, raise extra money for the hospital, which it did. And I might say, just as a footnote, since the Guild's founding, it's raised over $16 million for this hospital. Steve Frank probably has a better idea than this, but it was before you folks bought this hospital, people would instruct the ambulance drivers, take me to any hospital except Ojai. And after the takeover, the people were delighted. They'd say, take me to Ojai. I know this person. I know that person. They give you phenomenal service. And it went like that. In a couple of years from going to this ownership, Marty looked out and he saw that the community really deserved more services. They had to have more resources. And financially, this was a big struggle. So Marty Pops reached out to his friend Gary Wild of the Community Memorial Healthcare. One thing leads to another, and a merger was struck. That merger has been phenomenal for both Ventura and for Ojai. And it's going to continue to get better and better and better. The greatest thing perhaps that happened from that merger is Dr. Pops did not go to San Diego to reclaim his fishing boat. He agreed to serve on the Community Memorial Healthcare Board, where he served for 17 years. 7 years as the chairperson. I had the privilege of sitting in the boardroom and witnessing Dr. Pops as a board member and Dr. Pops as the chair, and it was spectacular. Anytime he had a comment, a question, a praise, or a concern, everybody paid attention. The years that he was the chairperson were incredibly challenging for everybody. That was the years that the Board of Trustees voted to come to grips with the California seismic requirements, build a new hospital in Ventura, remodel the Ojai Hospital, and build a new continuing care center in Ojai. A $350 million project. That sort of project's pretty complex and pretty nervous, especially if you don't do them all the time. And it's darn near impossible if you don't have $350 million. And we didn't. So this meant some extra trips to the Midwest, some extra trips to the East Coast to visit other hospitals, talk with contractors, talk with architects, and of course talk with bankers. There were meetings in the West Coast with not only the staff from the hospital who are coordinating all of this, but the architects and the contractors. Marty was in on a good number of those meetings. And while Marty was distracted doing that sort of thing, Barbara was in Ojai raising money to help fulfill the $25 million obligation that the community had made toward this project. There's an expression in the Valley that I hadn't really heard before, thankfully, and that is, dinner with the Pops is free, but the dessert will cost you. Barbara served up so many desserts that year, and I'm sure lots of people in this room helped for this, but Ojai did a phenomenal job and raised more than their fair share of that $25 million. Marty was not exempt from fundraising, though, and I know that from a personal experience because he came to see me with two other people that I think were just there to watch the carnage. They came into my office, they sat down, and I said, fellas, I appreciate you coming to see me, but my two kids were born in Ojai. Elise and I have contributed to the health system since the mid-'80s. We are all in. We are going to participate in this capital campaign. We're just not sure how much now. So I stood up thinking that they would stand up and I could shoo them out of the office. They didn't. Finally, I decided, well, maybe I better sit down. I sat down. Marty gave what I think is probably the best presentation I have ever heard on why we all should support the healthcare system in our community. It was phenomenal. And when he came to the part where he's going to ask me to contribute, he named a number that was up here. I said, Marty, Elise and I have never done anything like that. That's huge. If we did that, it would be our first. And he looked at me with that little twinkle in his eye, and he said, I'm so proud to be your first. Marty and Barbara, you have been so many people's firsts in this community. You have meant so much to so many of us. You have done so much that have helped everybody out here that this recognition is way overdue. But frankly, we didn't have the proper recognition to give you. We had to really create one. And we have created one. And you will be the first recipients of this recognition. I forgot to tell you what the name of the recognition is. It's the Dr. Martin and Barbara Pops Legacy Award. That recognition will hang in the lobbies of Ventura and Ojai hospitals. Will be there forever, and hopefully, and not on a regular basis, not on an annual basis, but when somebody gets even a little bit close to all that you've done for this community, their names will appear under your plaque, showing that they have lived up to your legacy. Marty and Barbara Pops. I don't care.
Look at this, a lasting legacy. There's like swag up here. It is incredibly moving and meaningful to be here tonight to honor my amazing parents. And this legacy honor is particularly thrilling. So I know they're just a little bit speechless, which is unusual for them. It's really inspirational to see the gratitude flowing around this room. And in both directions, right? Ojai's gratitude to them, but also their gratitude for this community, which really has embraced them so warmly over the 20 plus years that they've lived here. So in the spirit of that gratitude, they've written, these are their remarks, their message that they'd like me to share with you. And as was alluded to, the reason I get to do this is because my mother is not overly fond of public speaking. My father is overly fond of public speaking. And so you get me the middle ground. Okay, so are you ready? Here's what they want to tell you guys. Thank you all for your very kind words this evening. It has truly been our pleasure to support these two outstanding hospitals for more than 20 years and to be part of the campaign for the new CCC. Watching them grow, thrive, and make such a meaningful impact has been incredibly rewarding for us. We are grateful for the support of so many of you here tonight, and we would especially like to recognize a few dear friends. It was Joan Kemper who, as you heard, first coaxed Marty, that's what they wrote, but I think it was more like bullied Marty, onto the hospital board and hosted the initial planning meeting for the Hospital Guild. The rest, as they say, is history. Gary and Brenda Farr were instrumental in launching both the Guild and the Foundation, as were Peggy and John Russell and Tim and Terry Wolf. We are deeply, yeah. Can you guys wave? Yeah. The OG crew. We are deeply grateful to all of them for that and for their continued support to this day. Fun fact, it was Gary Farr who first imagined a black tie event to raise money for the hospital. His dream became the very first Nightingale Ball in 2002. Thank you, Gary, for that vision. You demand. It doesn't actually say you demand, I just added that. Okay. Finally, we must acknowledge Chris Rock. Wave, Chris. Who for more than 2 decades has been the guiding force behind both the Guild and the Foundation. We have benefited immensely from her leadership, her friendship, and her unwavering devotion to the hospital. Our success absolutely would not have been possible without her. We understand that many of you here tonight might not know us personally. However, we hope that our love and passion for our hospitals is contagious and that you will be inspired to continue supporting them and their exciting future. Our ability to move forward depends on the strength of the community, and we hope to remain an active part of it for years to come. Sincerely, Barbara and Marty.